Thanks for watching, everybody. This is odds.com. If you missed the show, check out the link below. You can see the whole thing over on odds.com. All right, next up, we've got the big boys. Marcin Tybura taking on Greg Hardy, the Prince of War. This is a fight that I'm so sketched out on. Okay, so y'all know, I love fading Marcin Tybura. I do not like Marcin Tybura. I think he is barely clinging to a UFC job. He's one of those guys who is just not that good. I mean, he's technically everywhere. He's got a good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, but he's a volume pillow puncher. He's a decision machine. He can't knock anybody out. I thought we were going to get that big, fat, juicy cash out when he had Maxim Grishin in there, who's a 185er moving up to heavyweight on short notice. He couldn't get it done, though. So this is a spot where Greg Hardy, in my opinion, is getting an appropriate step up in competition. Marcin Tybura circles well. He's light on his feet for a big guy, crisp hands, and one thing he does well is he's able to strike moving backwards. He can do that for sure. The thing that he struggles with, though, is power punchers. He's been knocked out 4 times. Augusto Sakai, Shamil Abdurakhimov, Derek Lewis, and way back in the day, somebody else. So his main UFC bad run, he went on a 1-4 run against Fabricio Verdum, Derek Lewis, Shamil Abdurakhimov, and Augusto Sakai, with his only win coming over Stefan Struve, which who doesn't beat Stefan Struve these days? Now, since then, he's the hot topic. Like, people have been cashing in on him left and right. He's on a 3-fight win streak. His stock couldn't be higher right now. But let's look at those names. Sergey Spivak, who when he fought Sergey Spivak, he was not the Sergey Spivak that we know today. And Marcin Tybura was a terrible matchup for Sergey, who likes to use his grappling and ground game. He beat Maxim Grishin, who is a short notice 185er coming up to heavyweight. And then he fought an old and dusted Ben Rothwell. So in my opinion, Marcin Tybura's strength of schedule has been relatively awful. So it explains the 3-fight win streak. Greg Hardy's only 7-2, though. The experience edge for Marcin Tybura cannot be ignored with 26 wins. However, Greg Hardy is incredibly improved. This guy gets better every time he steps in there, and he literally cuts to get to 265. This guy is a bully. He likes to get in there and be the bigger, stronger man, throw people around, and he's mean. He actually likes hurting people. He's a very, very good fighter mentality type of person. Now, when he fought guys like Yorgan De Castro, Maurice Green, I mean, look at that Green fight. He got him out of there. You know what I mean? Like, that was a spot where he was a big favorite. He's starting to step up. He's starting to show people his evolution, and he didn't go to a decision with Green. He made sure we knew that guy didn't belong on his level. This fight is a pick'em because Marcin Tybura is a better fighter than Greg Hardy is. That Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, the movement, the striking, all of it. Marcin Tybura is a better all-around fighter. But Greg Hardy has a much, much higher upside. He's the better athlete, and he has got that flash knockout power that will give him the opportunity to close the show at any point in time. And what we've seen from Tybura is if you keep him on his heels, I said before that he can strike moving backwards. He can absolutely strike moving backwards. But when he's getting hit with those brutal power punches, that chin just doesn't hold up. Greg Hardy can absolutely knock out Marcin Tybura in this spot, but if Marcin engages in the grappling, uses his wrestling, this one could end up being another boring decision win. So I'm personally going to pass. I was very, very, very tempted to bet on Greg Hardy in this spot, but he gets tired. He wears out in the second round of every single fight. And that Maurice Green spot, the referee kind of saved him, in my opinion. Maurice Green was still there. He was still rolling. He was still trying to survive. And I felt like that was a little bit of an early stoppage. The guy does legitimately have asthma. And when he exerts himself trying to get a fight done, he can slow down. He can gas out. So it's a sketchy spot, in my opinion. It's one that I'm going to watch very carefully and very closely, because if Greg Hardy goes for that finish and doesn't get it, Marcin will pick him apart for the next 10 minutes or so. I think this is an easy fireball and popcorn fight. One that I'm very, very curious to see unfold. We've got a total set at 2.5, though. yikes, I don't know, that under 2.5 doesn't sound so bad, because if Greg Hardy does gas out, I think there's an opportunity for Marcin Tybura to get a submission win if this thing hits the floor, maybe a TKO. Marcin Tybura is a big guy. So if Greg Hardy gasses out and Marcin ends up on top of him on the floor, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, Abdurakhimov doesn't have many knockouts on his record, and that's a guy that was able to put down Tybura, and I think his chin is really shot, man. I mean, I'm sorry, he's got 9 knockouts, so I misspoke when I said he doesn't have many knockouts on his record, but I really do think Marcin's chin is shot. It's just a really questionable spot in my opinion. There's better spots on the card to make money. I don't mind people backing Greg Hardy in this spot, because you're getting the younger fighter with the taller ceiling coming in here against a fighter that's just kind of treading water in the division. But I can absolutely see spots where Marcin could get this thing done. And with the fight being lined at a pick'em with Greg Hardy being a slight favorite, I don't think I want to take that shot personally. Yeah, and see there, Rick, right there. Uses his wrestling, take him down, drain that gas. Totally possible. Totally possible. All right, there we go. Getting caught up here. Kevin thinks it's going to be a first-round KO. I mean, like I said, I feel that chin issue. Yeah, he might. I mean, he's super athletic. He's super fast when he wants to be. He can absolutely close that distance and crack. Maybe we just look at Greg Hardy by knockout. Maybe that's not a bad spot to go ahead and find a little prop on Hardy inside the distance. You're not going to get paid super well on it. Yeah, he's about plus 135 right now, so you're not going to get much there. One thing I'm very pleased to announce is that we have the return of James Lynch here on the show. 434 viewers. You just got treated here. James Lynch back on the program. How you doing?
Thanks for having me back. I got a different shirt on. I had to look a little bit professional. I just interviewed Tyson Chartier, guys. Calvin Kattar's coach, Rob Font's coach. Ooh. Just got some insight. I can kind of add that into the conversation when we get to that fight. So the last I heard, you're on the Greg Hardy fight. So I'll quickly go over my picks and maybe get some thoughts on this here quickly. I like Sijara Eubanks against Pannie Kianzad. I like Bilal Muhammad against Diego Lima, although I think the line's a little too high on that one. I like Morono as the underdog against Anthony Pettis. Curious to get your thoughts on that. Maybe we can chat about that later. I like Julian Robertson over Santos, and I like Hardy, but I think the value is on Marcin Tybura actually.
So you and I have only missed on one spot, and we actually, I'm going off the UFC page here, so we haven't talked about Julian Robertson just yet. We'll hit that one next. But I did pick, I'm tempted on Pannie Kianzad in that fight. I think that fight is really, really close, and especially Sijara Eubanks is getting a lot of money coming in on her. That line is getting wider. I feel like there's some dog value again, dog or pass spot for me on Kianzad. Haven't bet it yet. We'll see how wide the line gets. Everybody agreed on Bilal Muhammad. We all think that he should just absolutely roll here. I am picking Alex Morono. That was the one spot on the card that jumped off the page at me, James. When he opened up as a plus 160 underdog, I hammered it for 2 units on the bet. It's my big bet for the night, and I cannot believe that he's plus 200 now. Like, I'm so flustered at the fact that I missed this line move, and now he's an even bigger underdog, and I could have a smash spot on an underdog that I think should be close to a pick'em. I don't know how and why people are betting Anthony Pettis in 2020. And then I'm going to say Greg Hardy, but I think this fight's a pass just because Marcin Tybura is the better, all-around fighter. And Greg Hardy could knock him out. We've seen Tybura have chin issues, and that's really his path to victory here, in my opinion. But it could look a lot like the last time Greg Hardy stepped up, and he could just get picked apart for 15 minutes by the more fluid striker. So
it's the case with Hardy, in my opinion, of still being a little bit too green. He's the better athlete. That's kind of the way I described it on my podcast this morning, where, Hardy's always going to do well in the heavyweight division, but just because he's such a good athlete, doesn't look like one. Obviously, he's got a bit of a gut, I think, but in general, his speed and his power, that's going to give him, wins over like a Mo Green and some of these other guys in this division. But, Tybura is tricky just because he's been in there with the best, right? So, and you talked about the well-roundedness. If he doesn't get finished early on, it could get very interesting if it goes to the judges' scorecards. That's also a quick thing on Alex Morono. One of the things I don't see a lot of people talking about is his teammate Diego Ferreira beat Anthony Pettis earlier this year. That is a huge advantage in his case there. And you've got a coach in Saif Saud who's already prepared for Anthony Pettis, knows his ins and outs. I know that was at 155, but with Alex Morono, he's just a tough guy to put away. The Chaos Williams fight, I interviewed Alex Morono before this fight, and he talked about how losing to Chaos Williams, it kind of put things in perspective on him on what he needs to work on. And are you going to have a better training partner than Jeff Neal heading into a fight like this, who's headlining this card? I mean, come on. Like, Alex Morono in some ways is having a tougher training camp, working with Jeff Neal than he is fighting Anthony Pettis. So that's why I like Morono there as well. So just wanted to mention that on top of it.
Yeah, steel sharpens steel. I love that. And honestly, I'm glad you said that because it's something I forgot to mention. I did mention that he comes from Fortis MMA, one of the best gyms in the world right now. But the fact that his training partner is main eventing, those guys are going to be pushing each other. Those guys are going to be peaking all at the same time. And I did forget to mention, it's one of the things that made me make the bet, but I forgot to talk about it on the show, was his teammate actually having just prepared for Anthony Pettis. That's always a nice little feather in your cap, something to push you a little bit in this spot. Like I said, I'm just pissed off that I butchered the line. I should have waited, and I just never could have guessed that people were going to back Anthony Pettis here.
Yeah, no, I agree. We'll see what happens in the fight. But yeah, I think, and then the other thing is the pressure, right? Pettis loses this fight, I think he's gone. I think he's going to Bellator with his brother. Morono doesn't really have to worry about that. I think if he loses, maybe he gets cut, but probably not, right? Like, he's a guy that's still relatively young. He's exciting. Why wouldn't you want to keep a guy like that around? He doesn't have a big paycheck in terms of his contract. Pettis does. So that makes him susceptible to getting cut. So I think that's another sort of caveat against him.
Dana White's been talking about those people that are going to get the axe. And I think there definitely is something to be said for the veterans who are just not really showing out that much anymore, that have a big paycheck. And I think part of him wants to go to Bellator, man. He doesn't want to be the champion anymore. He's running off to 170 for fun, exciting fights. Like, he belongs in Bellator at this point. And you just nailed it too. Alex Morono, someone was asking about his chin. I know we got to move on because I already broke this one down. Yeah, but, he got knocked out by Chaos. I think Chaos has ungodly power. I think that was just a freak incident. And he showed us in that Reese McKee fight that his chin is just fine. And with that kind of pressure, I don't expect Pettis to be able to withstand that kind of offensive pressure for 15 minutes. He just breaks these days. He's not in it for a long time fight.
I agree.
Oh, shout out to my guy MMA Locker Room though, saying Pettis just signed a new deal 3 months ago. That is interesting. That's true.
Interesting. That's true. However, I think with these cuts, I think that's sort of been something they just came to the conclusion to recently. So, I mean, just because he has 3 fights doesn't mean they can't just cut him there. But that does obviously save him a little bit here.
Definitely. All right. So we went a little out of order there. We went back to the Alex Morono Pettis fight. We already talked about Hardy Tybura.